What do you think is the most fundamental aspects of your religion?
Okay. First of all, I would like to say that Buddhism is not a theoretical, like a generic religion, as we know, and it is neither a philosophy nor a religion, but it's actually kind of teachings about how to end the suffering. So, to my understanding, the most fundamental aspects of Buddhist teachings is to focus on compassion and wisdom. So these two are the pillars of Buddhist teachings. Like if somebody thinks that that person wants to follow the Buddhist teaching, that means that he or she needs to cultivate, grow in compassion and wisdom. So compassion in terms of understanding the suffering of other people, including oneself, and then to find a wise way to end that suffering. So suffering can be both personal and collective or societal, etc., etc. So these are the two most fundamental aspects of Buddhist teaching. So I would say it's a teaching thing, but when there are followers and when somebody wants to compare Buddhist teachings with other religions, some might call it's a religion or philosophy, but it's a teaching. So if you were to ask me what are the most fundamental aspects of Buddhist teachings, so they are actually compassion and wisdom.
Okay. What do you want others to know about your religion?
Well, I mean, since we just talked about compassion and wisdom, I think these two are really important in today's world, because with the cutting edge technology and developments of the world, I think compassion is a much needed thing for all of us. So we all can find a way, regardless of our religions or whatever other differences, to understand and cultivate, learn compassion from Buddhist teachings, and at the same time the wisdom. So wisdom could be periodical, situational, at the same time that particular specific Buddhist wisdom to understand our life and to end the suffering at the ultimate level. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think is the most unique aspect of your religion?
The most unique aspect of the Buddhist teachings is to understand oneself. So all the time we trying to understand what's going on, apart from our physical part and our mental part. So the most unique aspect of the Buddhist teaching is to understand who I am, or who we are actually, and then to find solutions from being at that level.
What makes you a strong believer in your faith?
I don't call myself a strong believer, but humbly speaking, I would say I can actually bring myself into the Buddhist teachings, because Buddhist teachings are really practical to me. At the same time, they actually bring this peace regardless of anybody. There are no hard and fast rules and stuff. So I think the basic thing is that we have this abundant freedom to understand ourselves and the society and beyond oneself. So that freedom is, I think, the main thing that I admire a lot. I'm not saying other religions don't have freedom, but maybe I haven't studied too much about those religions. But I think we have, like, in my case, I have a lot of freedom to understand myself and the outer world beyond me. So that is really a good thing to work on my spirituality, and also, as I mentioned, this whole thing called compassion and wisdom. To work towards those two pillars, I think the freedom is actually very important.
Okay. What are some of your religious traditions and rituals, and what do you favor the most?
Okay, I think every religion, every philosophy, or including the teachings, they have rites and rituals. But I think when it comes to Buddhist teachings were actually you know maintained and brought to the generations by different countries. Like if I say Thailand, Burma, I mean they are actually Sri Lanka. They are actually Theravada countries, so they have their own rituals. And when it comes to China, Japan, and those countries, they have the Mahayana version of Buddhism. When it comes to Tibet, they have the Vajrayana Buddhism. So they all have different cultures which have rituals along with those cultures. So in my culture, where I come from, Sri Lankan culture, we have a lot of rituals. I would say that I can single out one single ritual that I like the most. So that means I'm actually clinging to one ritual in Buddhism. So I would say, pretty much, generally speaking, most of the rituals, starting from how do you call them, pageants or processions, I would say sometimes some different food offering stuff, sometimes those devotional songs, and they play a major role in keeping Buddhist culture in which we see the Buddhist teachings have been preserved for a long time. So I can't single out one thing, but those are the main rituals that I see to be good, actually, to be really worthwhile. But there are other worthwhile rituals too, but these are actually my favorite stuff.
I know there's like specific ones such as Vesak and Bodhi days.
Yeah.
So would you like to expand?
Yeah, I want to actually a little bit talk about Vesak Day. Vesak Day is the day when the Buddha, when the Prince Siddhartha was born, and the Buddha, the ascetic Gautama became the Buddha, and then the Buddha passed away. So there are different rituals, going with this particular day. As I told you, there are devotional songs. There are people who go to temples and monasteries. They take precepts. I don't think it's a ritual, but people sometimes they take part in those teaching type things as rituals too. They make it. They kind of like make it to a level that where they can see kind of a cultural ritualistic thing. So Vesak Day is one of the I think it's the biggest day of any Buddhist. And also, what was the other day you mentioned? The Bodhi. Behind me is the Bodhi tree, because we actually symbolize Bodhi tree as the place where Buddha actually was born. So we that once Buddha, once ascetic Gautama was the Buddha actually. Then what happened? He was spending 7 special weeks. In the second week, he went a little bit actually, few actually steps further, and then turned back, and then and then actually he was actually looking at the Bodhi tree, where he was able to become the Buddha for 7 days. So as a respect, as a token of gratitude to the Bodhi tree. So we've been maintaining that tradition so far. So we respect the Buddha, at the same time the Bodhi tree, where he became the Buddha. So they are also, watering the Bodhi tree, maintaining a Bodhi tree, respecting, and all these are rituals. So major type of rituals.
How does observing or performing these rituals affect your daily life?
As a Buddhist monk, I think you can't run teachings just by preaching, just by talking. You need some sort of a flavor to get things going. So I think respecting Bodhi tree and conducting those rituals like on Vesak Day, and maybe all the other rituals really, you know, make a huge consistency between the teachings and the rituals. So rituals, I mean, I'm not saying we have to be too much concerned about the rituals, because the teachings are the main thing, but rituals are a need also, because not everybody wants to take a look of the books, sacred books, because I mean, we should have a certain amount of these rituals, but we have to be very careful in you know, in keeping those things not too high, not too low. Yeah.
What are some of the symbols of your religion, and what do they symbolize?
I think we have the Dharma Chakra, which symbolize, I don't think I can see, I can show you, which symbolizes, you know, the day and the event when the Buddha actually first gave his sermon. So, you know, set the wheel in motion. That's what we call, like, set the Dhamma in motion. So he was actually asking the first 5 months, say, now this is what you learned from me. So you need to spread the Dharma actually. So it's like a rolling, you know, wheel. So Dharma Chakra, and also I would say the Buddhist flag, which you could see, you know, outside of this place. So these are actually main type of, you know, things. There are other type of, you know, symbols too, which I can't remember at the same time. But maybe Buddha statues too, right? Buddha statues, yeah, and some of the other ritualistic items where you could see those fans. Also the lamb. All these actually symbolize some, you know, representations of the deep teachings, at the same time cultural representations.
Okay. Does your religion provide a guide for your future path?
It does. I mean, now I actually became a monk by understanding beforehand about how things will go. I mean, as a, you know, as a kind of a sketch in my understanding. So yeah, I mean, it really helps, you know, as a monk, for me to, you know, focus on my spiritual life, at the same time helping other people who are really in need of the Dhamma. So also the social life. So I understand that this being a monk actually has you know, helped me a lot in pursuing this I wouldn't say it's a career, this whole thing. So it actually keeps my life going, you know. Yeah.
Okay. Does your community of faith always stand behind you in a time of need? How?
Depends on the situation. I think they do. For example, like what kind of okay, in a time of my need? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, they do. I mean, they really take care of the monks. Not even me. Like they are really concerned about whether monks like all of us get food, get clothing, and get medication, get shelter. They really, you know, they really take care of the monks and nuns and all this monastic community.
Okay. How does your faith handle societal issues such as premarital sex, intermarriage, teen pregnancy, and divorce?
Interesting question. So I think Buddha has not discussed like most of these you know, topics directly at some point, but we can find some you know, some clues about and advice about these you know, specific concerns. So when it comes to premarital sex, I would say Buddha actually talks a lot about celibacy. You know, like he was in India. So in India, you know, like there is a kind of a assumption, like kind of a big norm that one is going to be celibate for some time before that person is going to marry to someone. So that time when someone is going to be celibate is a special time. So I mean, there is a kind of norm that society in India believes that premarital sex can make a problem. But the problem is, nowadays people want to follow Buddhism regardless of a country, regardless of a territory. So it's becoming something like a deterritorialized thing in the world now. So at this time in the world, we know that a lot of people, they procrastinating their marriage for different things. They want to study, they want to actually make good money, they want to have a job. So in that case, I would think, since Buddha has not directly talked about premarital sex but celibacy, you should not get involved in adultery. Actually, that's a problem. Adultery is a problem. I mean, like somebody is going to spoil someone else's life, assuming that person is already married to someone. Other than that, if you take caution and if you understand what's going on, and then if you are not spoiling anybody, if there is any consented thing, I don't think that there could be a problem. But Buddha does not directly talk about this premarital sex. Celibacy is a good thing, according to Buddha, because that helps everybody to come up with special understanding about the life. But the problem is, if there is no upcoming marriage after celibacy for some time, there's no point of understanding that in that way. So since the world has been changing, rapidly changing, lifestyle of the people have been rapidly changing globally, so we have to revisit celibacy with premarital sex. So one has to make one's own judgment with the legal position of a country, with the cultural purpose of the country, and then to consider this thing. And intermarriage is actually a good thing to my understanding, because Buddha did not talk about it actually at that time. In India, there's a caste problem. Mm-hmm. But I don't think there is any issue, as we saw with premarital sex, when it comes to intermarriage. Like Buddha, do you think that Buddha was thinking that who marries to who? I mean, that's a kind of a different, very awkward, consideration. So he did not mind about it. Like he was minding the people and their virtues and that side. So is the teen pregnancy, and I don't think there is a clear teaching about teen pregnancy. If it is a concern in the West or in today's world, I think one has to find kind of a social type of solution for this thing. I don't think Buddha talks about this thing, but if we talk about celibacy with teen pregnancy, it's a problem, right? So anyway, but it's something that the today's world has to decide how to take care of that thing. We can directly find a solution from Buddhism about teen pregnancy, but Buddha talks about celibacy in clear terms. Divorce is also the same. At that time, I don't see that. I could see a lot of stories where people, broke up. Rather, they had a lot of issues and they approached the Buddha and then they solved the problem. I don't see there is a clear divorce in the teaching. So I don't think we can find a direct answer from the teachings. But I think if you can't stay with somebody, if you can't tolerate to some extent, then you have to decide that thing from your own judgment and from the legal perspective or from the societal norms of the today's world.
Okay. Yeah. What do you believe about deities?
What do I believe about deities? I think when we talk about deities, actually it's a polytheistic word, right? So I mean, bunch of heavenly beings. Yeah, I think in Buddhism, Buddha talks about polytheism. I mean, Buddha says that there are a lot of heavenly beings. You can, say there are this many of deities or heavenly beings. But what I actually believe in, I can't say I believe. I know that they exist. What Buddha says in his teachings is that if you are a good person, like who practices Buddhist teachings as a good person, these deities also take care of you. They also respect you. You don't need to go after them actually, like in other type of things. So if you are a good person, they will also take care of, because there's a story that where the head deity in all the heavens, he was actually going with his charioteer, his driver, for an event, and then this charioteer driver, he saw the head deity was actually respecting towards different directions, and he was actually puzzled at this thing, and he asked, "You are the head deity, and who you actually worshipping?" He said, "I'm actually worshipping those who take care of their life really good and their family, friends, and who lead a nice, good life, righteously or as a good person. I'm actually respecting them." So see, I mean, how that works. So I believe, I would say I know that they exist. I may have their support. Everybody may have their support if they are actually good people. So that's what I understand about deities. Buddha does not simply say everybody has to go after deities and to get help. If you are a good person, if that person is a good person, from the Buddhist perspective, mainly if someone is actually keeping the 10 skillful activities, I would name those 10. If someone is not killing, not stealing, not misbehaving, not lying, not talking behind the back, not using hurtful words, not gossiping or idle chatting, not being envious, not having any thoughts of killing someone, destroying someone, and not having wrong view. So if someone is to these 10 skillful activities, that person is getting all the support from all the heavenly beings, from all the deities. So that's what I understand about that.
Okay, is there a reason why there's so many of them? Like, or is there like a specific reason? Is it for like a prayer, or like, is there just like a reason why there's so many of them?
So many of deities?
Of the same deity?
We have to go back to the the ritualistic part of the Buddhist thing. So there are different deities where different cultures respect and maintain. So they actually, after respecting the Buddha, they may actually respect those deities. That's more likely a cultural type of thing, where the Buddhism was actually maintained with different Buddhist countries. They have their different type of deities. So that is how it works actually. Yeah.
Do you have any type of scripture or literature that you read and follow, and when were they written?
Well, I mean, if you can see that that area, that cupboard, you can see type of set of books actually in red color. Those were actually written in Sinhala language.
Or like literature that you read and follow, when were they written?
Okay, there are actually a bunch of books about Buddhist text. Especially in my tradition, it's Theravada, Sri Lankan Theravada, and you can see that on your right, that cupboard where you see those books, they are actually they were written in Sinhala language actually, but all these books actually deal with the Buddhist teachings, both discourses side and then the disciplinary side, and some of the books are actually really worthwhile mentioning, like Dhammapada. That's also regarded as the handbook of Buddhists, like in Holy Quran, Holy Bible, like those kind of books. So Dhammapada is one of the most interesting books that I know, where we can know, the most important and the quintessential type of teachings of the Buddha. Like if you read some of the sutras and some of the disciplinary teachings of many books, you get a sort of like inconsistent knowledge about different topics. But if you read Dhammapada, which covers the conventional part of the world and ourselves, ultimate part of the world and ourselves. So Dhammapada actually connects the both side, conventional truth and the ultimate truth. So I would, if I'm to say that what book took me a lot of interest, I would say it's Dhammapada, and I would I can also suggest anybody, if they want to start learning Buddhism, to start with Dhammapada.
Do you know when it was written?
it's said that these were actually convocated after the death of the Buddha. So I would say roughly 6 BCE. So, and then they were written in Sri Lanka actually in 5th century, 580 actually, 5th century. So now it's 21st century, right? So you can you can sort of like find out the gap between 5th century and 21st century. Yeah.
Okay. Do you pray, and if so, how do you pray?
I don't know how we can say that thing that we do. We don't pray actually in the Buddhist traditions. What we do is that we actually recite stanzas, or we actually teach. We actually recite, or we may chant some sutras in a way that we purify ourselves, respect the Buddha. Not that we ask something from the Buddha or anybody else to do for us. So it's kind of respecting the Buddha, and then chanting some sutras, to get things going. Not like a prayer.
What's a sutra? Because you mentioned it.
Discourses, like all the like. Sutra means like a discourse. There are a bunch of discourses. Let's say if you take one discourse called Mangala discourse, which means the Buddha has talked about 38 auspicious things that everybody needs to do. That is one of the sutras. So there are different sutras actually that go by topics actually. Yeah.
How does your religion react or provide understanding for violence in society in the past and the present right now?
Actually, the Buddha's teachings are all about compassion. So we don't think that there is any encouraging part about violence, across any type of books, or in the Tripitaka, or wherever we see the text in Buddhism. But the thing is, since Buddhism has different flavors from different countries, I don't know how they actually maintain this thing, and with the racial background, with the ethnicity background, it's a complicated issue. What I can say is that Buddhism has a good approach. I would say they have a good understanding about what we need to do for violence. Is to make a society where people are really positive about compassion. That's what the best reaction we see in the Buddhist teachings. And the Buddhist leaders and followers, they all actually in the mission of spreading that word across the globe. We really need to be compassionate, and then if there is a question, if there is a concern problem arise at some point, then they are finding really good, inclusive, positive, compassionate solutions to overcome those issues or eliminate those issues.
Okay. Were you brought up in this religion, or is it something that you chose on your own? I was born in Sri Lanka, Colombo, and my parents actually Sri Lankan Buddhist, so we don't have something called like an official initiation where we become Buddhist. So we actually, I was actually born into a Buddhist family, but in the case of the ordination, I made my own decision that I really wanted to become a monk and then spend this life, this spiritual life. So that was totally my independent decision. But becoming a Buddhist before becoming a monk was something that usually happens in Sri Lanka. If your parents are Buddhist, usually they are Buddhist. But nowadays, I think children, they make some choices. Like, let's say even they are born into a Buddhist family, they make choices to either to stay as an atheist, or agnostic, or whoever. Yeah. Okay. Have you had any personal experience that have reaffirmed your faith in your religion?
Well, I'm an eye-opener person. Like, I'm actually looking at things with my experiences, with my, especially when it comes to my hands-on experiences, I get to understand all the phenomena with Buddhist teachings. That's what I know, and then I can clearly see that there is a huge connection between what I've been going through and then what I learned. So, but there are some places where I still want to further study about those things. That I mean, all the positive things. I'm not talking about the negativities.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I see that they've been really validated in a way that I could understand the Buddhist teachings.
Okay. When do you feel that being a part of your religion helps you the most?
Well, I mean, I became a monk when I was 12. I think I was not this concerned about what I know. I think I made the best decision out of my decisions in my life, and I would say in my middle 20s, I think I thought that this was the best decision I made. So, and I actually validating myself about my decision that I made with current situation. With this time, I would say I've been actually monk for 21 years. So then by that time actually I was kind of validating myself about my decision.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Has your religion changed or evolved over the years? If so, how?
Well, I mean, Buddhist teachings, the fundamentals of Buddhist teachings have not changed a lot, but the way how the Buddhist teachings are presented in a multifaceted, diverse cultural backgrounds have been different, because we need some different ways to approach either the followers or beginners. So there is a huge controversy, debate among the scholars and non-scholars about what kind of changes have been happening, with the Buddha time and now. And some are really conservative, some don't like to get changed. But I think lifestyle and what we experience now, I mean, these things are really different from what we see in the Buddhist, in the actual Buddha time. So that doesn't mean that we need to change whatever the fundamentals. We need to, keep them as they are. But I think the way how the teachings need to be presented, the way how we need to understand with the modern lifestyle should be changed, I guess. But I think some of the things have been changing so far, but some have not been changing. So we have to see that in a liberal way. Actually, I hope things will get changed in a better way in the next few decades. Actually.
Okay. How do you think you would have lived your life if you were not a part of your religion right now? How different and how similar would it have been?
Oh, if I had not become a monk, I would have been a lay person. So then, I think, actually in my life, when I was a small kid, I want to be a reptilist. I like researching about snakes, but maybe that may have been a reality. If I had not become a monk, but then I did not like snakes, and that lay life. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
I have a few more questions.
Yeah, sure.
Buddhism does not offer a supernatural life like most religions, right? So do you find it hard to follow these when there is no supernatural, or is it like?
Well, I mean, there are things that we need to see in abstract, like I'm talking about this supernatural thing with the technical perspective from the science. So there are a lot of things that we see in abstract in Buddhism, unlikely in science. In science, they believe in technical stuff, right? So even though we don't see that, Buddha has not encouraged us to think this supernaturalism, but still we have to go at some point, in abstract. At that point, I'm not saying that we need to stick to this abstract thing. We need to investigate. Buddha himself asks us to investigate about what we are up to with different issues in understanding the life with Buddhism. So even though there are no supernatural things, but still this abstract thinking, abstract understanding is something that many people having some issues. But Buddhism does not encourage any supernatural stuff. Yeah.
Okay. What is the difference between living as a Buddhist monk and a Buddhist practitioner? What are your responsibilities as a monk?
Oh, it's a tricky question. I would say you know, when you are a monk, you have a certain set of different responsibilities. Like when you spend time as a monk in a temple, you have a different disciplinary, atmosphere, rules. I don't say rule atmosphere with the senior monks, but you are not committed to anything. Unlikely as a layperson, lay people are actually committed to their life, especially to the people. So less commitments and I think less burden when it comes to material stuff, and this peace of mind. So there are differences between clear differences we can see between a monk and a layperson. So they support us to continue maintain our life because they know this is higher than the nature of that life. But there's no big difference in terms of understanding the truth, because the both parties have the same opportunity to understand the truth called how to end the dissatisfaction of suffering. But the monastic community or monks or nuns, they have a better chance of purifying themselves in order to understand the truth.
Okay. How are your feelings towards other religions?
Well, I'm a liberal person. I don't know, all the other monks may have the same understanding. I'm a very liberal person. I try to understand any good thing from any religion, any philosophy, any teaching, so that I can develop myself. I can actually revisit what I already know. That can really help my understanding. I'm not a person who want to say that this is the most truthful thing, or else. So I would like to understand this whole bunch of teachings, and I have a special choice I made to continue as a Buddhist monk. So I'm actually trying to understand all the good things from other bunch of religions, philosophies, teachings.
How do you feel about the topic of nirvana, and is it something of importance to you?
Well, Nirvana comes from Hinduism, and there's a musical group also, Nirvana, I think. Perhaps you may have heard that. Anyway, Nirvana means that that's a perfect ending of the suffering. So where you eradicate your attachment part, like unnecessary attachment part, and your hatred part, and your ignorance part. So I think that really relates to all our life, no matter who we are, in terms of cultures, countries. So as Buddhists, and especially as a Buddhist monk, I would say even the thinking, because as monks, actually we are dedicated, we are committed to following the path to end the suffering. That means we are into Nibbana. So I understand that path really helps me, in my case, helps me to understand my perspective, my understanding about the whole thing, and ultimately to get a sense of that ultimate truth. So understanding that truth, which we call ending the suffering, is that I'm attaining the perfect wisdom in Buddhism, understanding everything properly. So that really practically helps me in my life and all the other monastics.
According to Buddhism, what is the problem for humans, like the dilemma, their flaw, and what is the cause of this problem?
They say it is craving. It's a craving, actually. So this craving, probably could be a bigger word for you. So craving about interest, like for example, because Buddhism believes in number of lives back and ahead of us, right? So not just this life that we live. So the main reason, the primary reason of why we've been actually becoming reborning, is that we have been encouraging, developing a craving about us and what we enjoy. So because we die with this craving, we are tending to becoming again and again. So what Buddha asks us is to find out the reason of this craving, this suffering that is craving, and end that the craving. That is how we can get over this thing.
Okay. According to Buddhism, what is the ideal state, goal, or ultimacy for individuals?
Understanding oneself, because oneself has all these issues: attachment, I would say basically craving. So if someone can understand the craving, from what all the other negativities come from, like jealousy, anger, that's a mismanagement of oneself. That's why we are into those negativities. And the reason why craving and all the negativities have a link is that, when, let's, for example, if I'm into jealousy, then what happens? I develop an attachment, I develop a craving towards jealousy. I think I want to justify about being jealous. So I'm jealous about that person. I want to justify my jealousy. So that justification is a craving. So that's why Buddha simply said we need to, eradicate this craving thing, where all the other secondary defilements actually come from.
So nirvana is not like the actual goal. Like it's not like what you're trying to go for. It's just for trying to get rid of the craving.
Nirvana is not a destination. It's the path actually. Our path is following the eightfold noble path to understand the craving. So when somebody is on the path of eightfold noble path, then that path itself means nibbana. So at a certain point, that person will clearly understand, perfectly understand that path, and that's the nirvana.
Okay. By what means are this ideal achieved? Like, how are you supposed to get rid of your craving?
Well, that's an interesting question actually. Craving is a mismanagement of oneself. So if one can pay attention to one's satisfaction more than this contenting, because when we say we are content, that means we are actually specifically concerned, happy about one thing. But satisfaction has a bigger version of being content. So if we can satisfy, and if we can really know what we really want, what we really need, I think people have more wants than more needs actually. They're actually going beyond the needs. So if you can actually cut down on the wants and the desires, they are in a better position to manage themselves, so that they are not into craving actually.
Okay. I saw that it said there have been 25 Buddhas in total so far.
25? 28.
28.
In my tradition actually. But in the Mahayana tradition, they say there are infinite number of Buddhas actually.
Can you explain a bit more about this? Like, how is the Buddha selected, or like how?
Well, I mean, we come to know this number from a book called Buddha Vansa. That's one of the books in the cupboard. Other than that, we don't know. I mean, somebody may ask a question: were there any Buddhas before the first Buddha? We never know, right? So the books say there were actually 28 Buddhas, and there is one Buddha actually coming up in number of other years ahead. So they achieved the same awakening, which is called Buddhatva, and they spread the same message, but at different times. But their lifespan, their time, how they approach the people, and the Bodhi tree, the name of the Bodhi tree was different from one time to one time. Last time it was a different tree. For example, like, I don't know how I can name the botanical name of this tree, but in one of the other Buddha's time, the Bodhi tree was a banyan tree. So it got changed. So other than that, other than those specifics, the same message, same awakening, but this keeps going. Don't know where it will get ended up, but it will keep going.
You know how the world is changing, so like younger generations these days are more like into electronics and technology. Do you think that will have like a negative effect on religion, or like how many of them follow religion or something like that?
I think the cutting edge technology is a double-edged sword. Like, for example, if we can take a knife at home, like what happens is, like, people at home, they use it to cut vegetables, right? And when it comes to a medical doctor, they use different types of actually knives for their surgical usage. But what if somebody thinks to grab a knife and then to stab somebody? So it's not about the item or the gadgets or whatever the things. It's about how to use them wisely. At the same time, how to use them positively. So I would say becoming more cyber conscious is a good thing, but I think the younger generation or whoever who use the internet or whatever the stuff, they need more awareness about how they can wisely use those things. That's what I concern about. I'm not saying that it's a negative impact of anything, not even the Buddhism, but also about anything. So we need to bring awareness, about certain issues that may have happened over the last few decades with technology so badly, and how to prevent such things happening again, and then to positively develop issues concerning the world with social, media or whatever other, electronic printed versions. So that's what I concern. That's what we all need to talk about. Actually, I'm not saying this cutting-edge technology is a bad thing. It's a negativity. I think we've been learning a lot. But there may be a few bad people, and that can happen in time, right?
Are there any final comments you would like to talk about Buddhism, or just to wrap everything up?
Well, I would wrap up by saying Buddhism is a place where people can be compassionate, going more than being, empathetic, right? There's a difference between empathy and compassion, right?
Yeah.
So it actually helps us to, develop this compassion thing. That's really a big problem, more than mindfulness. Nowadays in the West or in the East, they were all concerned about mindfulness some time ago. But nowadays people are more concerned about why don't people think about other people? Why don't they really concern about other people's lives, safety? So it's about kindness or compassion. So we need to bring up this compassion thing. So at the same time, as I said, the other one of the fundamentals of the Buddhism, wisdom, how to use wisdom to understand and to practice compassion, and then to make a better world with the wisdom part too. That's how I can wrap up the conversation. Okay, thank you for interviewing me. So yeah, have a good day.